So this week has been a crazy week for me. My parents were in town visiting, and this is the first time that I have seen them in a year. They still live in the little geographically isolated town that they raised me in. And I, of course, moved about halfway across the continent. And so them coming to visit me is kind of it's kind of, it's a bit of an event. My mother is disabled. My father isn't disabled yet, but it's kind of a miracle. And so, they're a bit older, and traveling is not easy for them. And you might be wondering why we didn't travel out to meet them. Well, we got the three small children, and we have tried one road trip with three small children, and that was when my husband's grandmother turned 80. And so we got together with the in-laws and we arranged to drive all the way up to my husband's hometown with three children under the age of 4. And that was an adventure. One of the kids got car sick on the drive there. She vomited all over herself. She vomited all over the car seat. We stopped at the first gas station we could, and I took the kid, James took the car seat. We kind of divided it all up and attempted to clean it up as best we could. She was adorable. She handled it so well. I was like, Mom, I puked. I looked back and she was just coated in it. I walked into the gas station with this little teeny girl, that bent over walk you do when they're so tiny that you have to bend over to hold their hand. And, she had just puke everywhere. And we got to the back of the gas station and we were closing the bathroom door behind us, and this very sweet gas station attendant opened up the door and handed me a roll of paper towels and a couple garbage bags. And I was very grateful for that. She had it in her hair. She had it all over everywhere. It was impressive just how much vomit such a tiny person could produce. So I got her cleaned up and washed off and into a fresh pair of clothes, and we walked out of the gas station with our little garbage bag full of dirty, pukey clothes. And my husband was just getting the car seat back into order, so we got her back into the car seat. We gave her some ginger ale for her stomach, and off we went again back down the highway. Staying in a hotel with three children under the age of 4 was an exercise in insomnia. And by the time we started heading home, we hadn't slept very well in like 2-3 nights, and that was not fun. I would not change it for the world. It was awesome. We all got together and we surprised my husband's grandmother at work. And so we all showed up at work one day with these little tiny kids in tow, and she was so delighted to be seeing them in person. She just hugging them and holding them, and she was so excited, and it was really a cool thing to have happen. And so I'm very happy that we did that. But I like sleep. Sleep is nice, and I miss sleep when I can't get it. So are we gonna go on another road trip that's considerably farther? Not anytime soon. Maybe when the kids are a little bit older and they can handle a road trip better. Then we may take them all the way out to where Mom grew up, and they can see tons of snow, like just incredible amounts of snow. Although honestly, I wouldn't want to take them up when it's that snowy. I'd probably try to find a little sliver of the year where it's not covered in snow, just so that we wouldn't have to worry about getting stuck on the side of the road in the snow, which can be kind of a deadly problem where I grew up. And then, have 3 small kids in tow who probably aren't going to handle being stuck on the side of the road in the cold quite as well as their adult counterparts. It's a lovely place. It's just the middle of nowhere. It's not a lovely place. it's a very cold, snowy, isolated, and desolate place, but you know, it has its moments where it can be pretty. It's a great place for a vacation. You just don't want to have to live there. I don't know why my parents like to live there. I know my father likes the snow, so that might be part of why. Anyway, we had a great week. I spent most of this week just doing domestic stuff. I was baking lots because I'm probably better at baking than I am at cooking. And so I was baking all sorts of breakfast pastries and just different things so that I could, you know, have interesting food to give to my parents while they were here. And they would come in, you know, they came in the morning and I had coffee and, you know, some new breakfast pastry every morning. And we would all sit down and we would drink coffee and we would talk and we would catch up. I had not actually told them until just this week everything that happened with the abortion. They knew that the pregnancy was non-viable and could not be sustained, and well, probably could not be sustained. I mean, I could have tried, I suppose, but basically the pregnancy was non-viable. And they knew that we were seeking an abortion procedure. They didn't know that we got kicked out of Planned Parenthood until this week. They didn't know that I hemorrhaged in the hospital until this week. So I was telling them the fun, exciting story about how I nearly bled to death in the hospital and how they brought James back and my husband back in to see me, and I was, you know, covered in blood and I tried to hold his hand and my hand was like just cherry red all over. You know, and it's a fun story now because I survived it, but I suppose for somebody hearing it for the first time, along with the knowledge that I had just lost my baby, it probably sounds a little bit more depressing. At the time, I was really excited to be alive because that wasn't something I could have taken for granted. It was a little iffy, and so, you know, if you survive something a little iffy like that, it's like, well, you know, I'm alive, yay, I'm excited, I'm happy. So, you know, that was an interesting conversation that I don't think they were expecting to have, but, you know, they were there and they were here, and so we ended up having that conversation. They got to see their grandkids, which was really awesome, and I mean, we had a wonderful visit. I haven't been thinking much about videos this week because I've been a little bit preoccupied. I will talk a little bit about college education because I don't really have one. My parents are rather heavily educated. They really wanted me to go to a university when I was younger and get plenty of college education. Like, I think a lot of parents in my generation wanted that for kids in my generation. There was a big push for a lot of us, you know, oh, go to college, especially for the girls, you know, go to college, get a job, get a career, and then you can meet, you know, the man of your dreams and have kids and all that stuff. And a lot of women in my generation have done that. They went to college and they had the career, and now they're hitting their mid-30s and realizing that they don't have a husband and they don't have kids, and they kind of wanted those things before they ran out of time. And so egg freezing is a big thing now, and you know, women are rushing around looking for Mr. Right, and that's not the sort of thing you can do just instantaneously. And I've been watching like all these stories of women who are, you know, just a couple years older than I am. Just, I mean, literally a couple, like 2 years older than I am, and they're discovering that, oh my gosh, you know, I can't find the one, and I need to have kids, and so I'm in a hurry, and none of these guys are in a hurry, and they don't seem to understand why I'm in a hurry. And it's like, I watch it with this sense of horrified fascination because in many ways it seems like I did everything wrong. You know, I dropped out of college very, very early in, despite the fact that my parents really wanted me to go to college, not just for the usual, oh, you should go to college, this is just what people in your generation should do, but also because they had loved college. My parents loved college, they loved education, they were very proud and pleased with their education and, you know, the level of education they had attained, and they wanted that for me, and I dropped out like right away. It just was not for me. And now I look at it and it's like, I met my husband when I was 23 years old, and you know, we had kids after, you know, taking a few years to date and be engaged and get married, and then spend a little bit of time being married and really establish and solidify a relationship with each other. Then we decided to have kids, and we had plenty of time to have kids, and so we had, you know, well, we've had 3 so far, and you know, a couple of failed pregnancies on top of that. So you know, I've been pregnant 5 times now, and there was no rush, there was no hurry. I mean, I wanted to have the kids close together because I really wanted to do that. He wanted to do that too. So you know, we weren't rushing, we didn't feel rushed, but we were kind of doing them all, you know, one right after the other. But it wasn't a rush kind of thing, like we have to get this done now because we're running out of time. You know, we wanted to have, you know, 4 kids, and there was no point at which it was like, oh gosh, I don't think we're going to have the time to do this. It's like, we looked at the schedule we'd set out for ourselves, and it's like, yeah, we've even got some wiggle room toward the end in case something goes wrong, which something did go wrong. You know, I should have a 5-week-old baby right now, and you know, something went wrong, and we've got some wiggle room toward the end, so it's okay. You know, and I was talking with my parents about this. I was talking about this, I guess they call it the delayer boom. I only heard that term like, gosh, last week. And so I still need to get an idea of what this delayer boom thing is. And I did everything the opposite of this. And in some ways it felt at the time like I was doing everything wrong. You know, don't you want to go to college? Don't you want to get an education? What about a career? Well, I had a career as an exotic dancer. Probably not the kind of career people wanted me to have, but you know, it was a career that I liked. You know, and then I had my kids, and now I'm looking at it and it's like, well, if I really wanted a college education, I could just wait until they're in school and pick out a college. And you know, I've already looked at it and it's kind of like, well, you know, there's going to be a point down the road, not too far into the distant future, where they're going to be, you know, they're going to be moving out of the house, and it seems like it's far away, but some days it also seems like it's tomorrow because everything is moving so quickly. With really tiny kids, time just starts flying, and everything starts happening very, very fast. You know, one minute they're learning to crawl, the next minute they're walking, and the next minute they're graduating from high school. And so I looked at it and it's like, you know, there's going to come a point where they're not going to need me so much, and I'm going to have some free time on my hands, and I might want a career. And that's the time that I can invest in a career, because, you know, I won't be young and pretty anymore. I mean, that's something that I've already noticed. I don't look like I did in my 20s. And it doesn't matter. You know, you don't have to look like a supermodel to get a career. You know, if I want to go and learn how to be a welder and become a welder, I can go learn how to be a welder and become a welder. And I can work for, you know, a solid few decades as a welder. If that's what I want to do. If I want to have a career as, you know, God, I suppose, I mean, I've got a few things in mind that I could get into, but I'm still juggling crazy ideas. Carpentry sounds interesting, but wood can be temperamental, and I don't know if I really want to deal with it that much. I made the dining room table, and I built the chicken coop, which I would actually look at that chicken coop and the state that it's in. It's solid. It's very solid. I broke a lot of rules, basic carpentry rules in building that thing. And I think that any decent carpenter who looked at it would be like, well, it's a very nice chicken coop, but maybe carpentry isn't for you. Um, but woodworking is fun and interesting. You know, I don't know if that's exactly what I would want to do. Welding sounds a little bit more interesting than woodworking. But you know, hot burning objects, maybe not exactly what I want to be doing with, you know, I was looking at making stained glass at one point. That sounds interesting. You know, I live in an area where there are plenty of, you know, affluent people if I travel far enough down the road, and there are some of them, I'm quite sure, who would be interested in purchasing stained glass. Um, I have no idea what I want to do, and the wonderful thing is right now I don't have to do anything right away because I'm still very preoccupied with the kids. And at the same time, I have a little bit of time to plan and kind of just daydream about something new that I want to do with myself when the kids get old enough that I have some free time, you know? And then I can have a career in anything, anything that interests me. And there's quite a lot of interesting stuff out there in the world. So it's really exciting in a way, but it feels almost like being at the end of high school again, only much better because I'm not horribly depressed or horribly sick, and I don't feel this horrible sense of hopelessness about my future. So that's really cool. But there is that sense of potential. Like I can go out and, you know, there's a lot of different career opportunities out there. Now, maybe I won't be able to become an astronaut, but I never wanted to do that anyway. You know, a lot of the things that I do want to do are very reasonably, I won't say very, I will say reasonably attainable career goals. If I decided to pick out a career, you know, I wouldn't be able to be a supermodel. First of all, I'm too damn short. Second of all, I was never going to be a supermodel to begin with. But there are a lot of very fascinating and interesting and exciting career paths that are open to me. And so it does feel just a wee bit like the end of high school. And I look at my life and I look at how really wonderful it is in so many ways. How I've got my kids and they're growing and they're healthy, and I've got my marriage and that's stable and healthy and loving, and you know, we've got this house that we've got that's, you know, I constantly am tinkering with, you know, I'm painting something, you know, I'll paint the doors in a room, or, you know, mess with some other thing or put up a set of shelves somewhere, and I'm constantly tinkering around in here. And you know, life is very full and full of all this promise and opportunity. And then I listen to these stories of women who are just literally, you know, 2 or 3 years older than I am, and this sense of desperation and growing hopelessness that they have, that maybe they won't be able to have a family, and maybe they won't be able to find a husband, and they did the career first and it just didn't work out for them. And that's horrible. That's terrible. I feel bad for them. And I know there are a lot of people who are looking at them and saying, well, you made your choice. And yeah, they made their choice, but they did what they were told to do. And that's what young people are supposed to do. They're supposed to listen to the wise advice of their elders and do what their elders tell them to do if that advice is in fact wise. And for my generation, it just seems like the wise advice of our elders in many, many cases has misled us. And me, I fell way off the beaten path, and I ended up going through all sorts of strange and twisting roads that I never could have predicted. And somehow I ended up here. And I really don't necessarily know how that happened. but I do think, having looked at all these other women who are having these late fertility crises, I think the best decision, one of the very best decisions I ever made in my life, was when I found a truly good man. I didn't let him go. When I finally found somebody who was worthy of marriage, I kept him, and I did marry him, and I did stay with him. And I didn't put off having children, even though the idea terrified me. It absolutely terrified me. I was so scared in the delivery room with my first child. The nurse was saying, just push and imagine your baby coming up and into the world. And I was like, I am imagining that I'm terribly constipated, and I'm definitely not about to become a mom, because that concept on top of all this pain is just a little bit too terrifying for me to handle. And then I had the baby, and I looked at her, and she was absolutely the most perfect little thing I had ever beheld in all my life. And a lot of the fear dissipated at that point. Like, once I saw her and she was there, and she was in front of me, and she was a very real person, a lot of that, oh my gosh, I'm terrified because I'm going to become a mother, a lot of that went away very, very quickly. It just evaporated, which was cool and unexpected. But those two decisions, most particularly the first one, staying with my husband, not that there was any other alternative to that for me. I met him, and that was just it. It was a very rapid, I met him, we knew each other for a month, and at the end of that month, we started talking about getting married. It was very fast. It was one of those things. It was so fast, it left my head spinning a little bit, because I remember looking at him and just thinking to myself, this is all very quick. Are you sure that this is the one? And then thinking immediately after that, well, yes, this is the one. So that's it. And I hear these stories now about women who, they had a guy they were in a committed relationship with, and not a committed, but in a relationship with, and he was a really great guy, and then for some reason they broke up, and now they're, in their mid-30s, and they're thinking back to that guy and wondering what would have happened if they'd made it work. And it's like, maybe you should have made it work, when you were in your early to mid-20s, and you were at the peak of your beauty, and I mean, I hate to say sexual market value, but basically the peak of your power. That was the time to grab the best man that you could possibly find and hold on to him. And, it's a difficult thing, because there are a lot of women who are looking at it and saying, we don't need negative stories about, oh, well, you need to get married early, because that's just going to drive women away from getting married. They'll be like, well, that's old-timey advice that's not particularly useful, and what if I just want to have a career? What if I just want to do my own thing? And there aren't so many women who are coming out and saying, I got married when I was in my mid-20s, and I had kids in my mid-20s, and it was the best decision that I could have made. There aren't that many people coming out and saying that. So, I'll say it. I don't know if I'm a good role model. I'm a retired stripper. But despite the many strange life decisions that I've made, I think that was a good one, and probably the best one. But anyway, getting back to my parents, they asked me what I would do if I decided to go back to college, what I would go in for. And I have a few ideas. I find ethics to be very interesting, so maybe I would look at ethics, because I would love to talk about ethics, but I know that there's a lot about, like, ethics itself is very complicated, and so I know that whenever I'm talking about it, I'm only brushing on along the surfaces, and I'm missing a lot of the really deep major ideas, and it frustrates me. Um, I mean, I suppose there's other areas that are also interesting, but uh, you know, and I told my parents this. I have nightmares even to this day that I'm back in college and I'm watching years of my life drip past uneventfully while I sit at a desk and study something useless and irrelevant because some dusty professor enjoyed that particular topic and decided, hey, let's have an entire semester 101 instead of, God, I had one semester intro to anthropology. We spent the entire I can't say that today, intro to anthropology semester studying flint chipping and monkey teeth. And when I say monkey teeth, I mean prehistoric, pre-humans. So, early human monkey teeth. And I mean, that does show you the point in history at which humans began, eating a more carnivorous diet, or early hominids, not necessarily humans. The precursors to humans started eating a more, actually, it wasn't just carnivorous, it was a more omnivorous diet. And we looked at so many monkey teeth and we remembered so many monkey teeth. And the only thing that I actually learned in that entire class that was of any interest to me whatsoever was the concept of hypergamy. Not the concept of hypergamy as you hear about it in the manosphere these days, with many people talking about it and having some really very negative ideas about it. But I was introduced to it in my, very brief time in college, as a type of primate behavior, a monkey behavior, basically. And it was fascinating to me. I mean, I was sitting in class and I remember looking at it, it's like, that's the only interesting thing he's said all semester. Finally, something that I actually want to learn. And that was my entire anthropology course, which I flunked out of, by the way. I should just make that perfectly clear. The only course I didn't flunk out of was math. And I'm horrible at math. So I studied, which is why I passed the course. Everything else was awful. My last semester, I just completely stopped showing up for classes. And that was because my mom had a massive MS flare-up. And, 1 minute she was normal, and then like a couple hours later, she was completely disabled. And we took her into the ER, and they told us that she had a lot of, I think it was swelling in her brain. It was something going on in her brain. And they needed to give her an infusion of steroids, which took approximately an hour for her system to absorb. And they would have to do that every day until the symptoms started to die down. And they didn't know if they would be able to reverse her symptoms, but it was the best shot we had at stopping it. And my father was running the family business with my mother, and she was putting in crazy long hours, and he was putting in crazy long hours. And I looked at it, and it was like, he's going to be doing both their jobs now, and he can't stop for several hours every single day to take mom in for this transfusion, because we'd wait an hour in the ER, and then we get to the back area, and then they give her the transfusion, which took an hour, and he didn't have time for that. And my brother could drive, but he was in high school. And let's face it, of the two of us, he had a promising future and I didn't. So I told my family that I would take mom in for her transfusions, and I just stopped attending. And I do not regret that decision. I was actually very relieved to be leaving college. I was relieved to have an excuse to not be there. It was not what I wanted to do with my life. It was very much not what I wanted to do with my life. So I know my parents loved college, and I think there's a part of me that would like to go back just for the sense of legitimacy that it would give me. And there's a part of me that very much hates the idea of ever going in the first place. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. And the good news is, I have time. I'll talk to you guys later.